Hello and welcome to Dugout Debrief. I'm your host, Chris Deluca. This is Boom Broadcasting's one, first, and only baseball-centric podcast, and we are here in the month of October, and you know what that means? It means postseason baseball. And we have a lot to talk about with that. We have a big news segment to get to, too, by the way, because, it was Black Monday here recently. A lot of managers got let go / were not renewed. We also had two major collapses we're going to talk about. We had a couple retirements as well we're going to mention. So the news segment is actually going to take up a very large section of this show. The playoffs are always kind of weird with this show because it's kind of hard to be fully up to date and everything. So I'll talk about some games. I won't talk about some others kind of based on where we're at in the recording. I'm very, very transparent with that, as I always like to push. But with that being said, we're going to be talking about two major collapses. We're going to be talking about the New York Mets and the Detroit Tigers. The New York Mets, who up until June 12th were the best team in baseball, 21 games above 500. And then over their last 93 games, they went 38-55. So the only teams that were worse than that in their final 93 games of the year were the Chicago White Sox, who set the record for being the worst team in MLB history last year, the Washington Nationals, who were incredibly disappointing, the Minnesota Twins, who had one of the season-to-season largest fall-offs I've ever seen, and then finally the Colorado Rockies, who almost broke the White Sox record, but did not. Rockies are the worst team in baseball in the year 2025. And I think Gary Cohn said it best. This is the most disappointing season in the Mets' 64-year history because the amount that they invested is insane, and what ended up happening to lead them here is even crazier. Obviously, we've all seen the clips. I actually saw this live because I watched that. That was when I had the last games of the year on. I had the Mets broadcast on in their game in Miami against the Marlins. And we all know what the commentator said, what Ron Darling was saying. Going and saying that this is the Marlins World Series. He was mad that they took a picture in front of the dugout. I personally disagree with Ron Darling on that sense because, these guys, is for especially a team like the Marlins who trades a lot of players away. This is their last time they're going to be playing together. I mean, yeah, they were definitely happy to eliminate their division rival, but I think they took that a little bit too personally. But at the same time, for him and Keith Hernandez and that whole announcing crew, I understand it's frustrating. Finishing 83-79 is really frustrating when you put the amount of money that you put into that team. Overall, they could have been in the playoffs if Kodai Senga would have fielded a ball cleanly, if Pete Alonso would have fielded a ball cleanly. Just defensive, especially nightmare this year, pitching nightmare, which I'm going to be talking about here. But going back to the more just disappointment is, yes, they were upset that they lost that final game because if they would have won that final game, they would have been playing in the month of October and the Cincinnati Reds would not be playing against the Dodgers. I also want to apologize about me being a little bit stuffed up here, a little bit under the weather this week, but that is perfectly okay. But continuing the disappointing point, 2025 payroll was insane. It was $342 million, and Juan Soto takes up 61, almost 62 million of that just overall. So on that 15-year contract as well, it's insane. It is just really, really insane that he is going to be making $765 million over that 15-year contract. And while he did good, he really seems like he hates the Mets. And I know that might be just kind of a crazy take. I feel like he saw that amount of money, and that's understandable. But he left the Yankees for that amount of money. And the New York Yankees, despite the fact they lost game 1 to the Boston Red Sox in a very close matchup, the Yankees are much more in a position to compete for a variety of reasons. One, just more talent, and two, I won't say an easier division necessarily, but just less of a funk around them. Carson was talking about this on the Gridiron Address this Sunday about some teams just have a funk around them, and the New York Mets definitely have that around them this year. Shout out to Carson for just kind of putting that idea in my head. But I mean, if I'm going to say what the problem is here, why the Mets were so disappointing, it was the pitching. I mean, Kodai Senga, $15 million a year, option to AAA. Sean Manaea, $20 million, and he got moved to the bullpen. Frankie Montas, $17 million, moved to the bullpen, out for the year. Your number one pitcher is David Peterson and Clay Holmes. That as a 1-2 is not going to work. I was confused enough when they put Clay Holmes in a starting role when they signed him. I understand the logic, but it didn't make sense, and he did okay. Don't get me wrong, but Clay Holmes had a 3.53 ERA, a 1.14 ERA plus, and a 4.11 FIP. David Peterson, a little bit worse with a 4.22 ERA, 95 ERA plus, and a 3.49 FIP. It's not bad, but these are not your 1-2 guys. Do I think that this is the worst collapse in MLB history? No, because it is the most expensive collapse in MLB history. I mean, I was not as big on the Mets as a lot of people were. People had penciled them in to at least make the National League Championship Series. I did not have them winning that division. I still had them having to go through as a wild card, probably have to go on the road. Would have been probably to either LA or Philly if we're talking about it in the preseason, but somewhere. They're just not in a good spot. And going into next year, the pitching's the biggest thing. And we're going to be talking about the New York Mets in the offseason episodes, because as I did last year, I'm going to be doing this once again. Just the offseason episodes, we'll be just talking about teams, breaking each team down individually, all 30 teams down individually. And this one is going to be a doozy. That's all I'm going to tell you. We spent the first 6.5 minutes of this program talking about the New York Mets. We're going to move on from the New York Mets because they're not even in the playoffs. We're going to be moving on to a team that did make the playoffs. And that is the Detroit Tigers. They are currently playing right now. From the best team in baseball to finishing with basically being the last team to clinch an AL playoff spot. They led the AL Central by 10 games on September 3rd. They blew a 15.5 game lead at its largest. They went 7-17 since September 1st, which is just absolutely atrocious. And honestly, I think that if Houston didn't deal, which we'll be briefly talking about Houston here in a second, if Houston did not deal with so many injuries, they would have completely missed the playoffs. And I will say that 100% that if Detroit or if Houston managed to stay healthy and that rotation especially didn't get as hurt as it did, Detroit would have literally gone from the best team in baseball to out of the playoffs within a month and a half. And that would have been something that needs to be put in the history books. That would have been, I won't say 28-3 level, but that would have definitely been within 5 to 8 spots of that as the biggest collapses in sports history in general. Skubal is likely winning 2 Cy Youngs. But the thing is I really don't see him wanting to stay. He's going to be probably gone mid next season if the Tigers are not competing, or in free agency if they just do nothing. We'll be breaking that down again in the offseason more in depth because we're still kind of here in the postseason. Detroit is still in it as of the recording of this episode. Playing Cleveland in the wild card divisional round of 2024 rematch. Just really, really not good vibes going in. We'll be talking about that game briefly here in a second. So we'll be going back to the Tigers, be circling back to them. I just want to quickly talk about the Houston Astros just while we're kind of on the subject here. Houston, I would not really call a collapse, despite the fact that it is the first time since 2016 that they missed the playoffs. They went 87-75, worse than their record says, if you ask me. But I mean, the amount of people that they lost is one, just sheer amount, and plus the talent. Jordan Alvarez, one of the best hitters in baseball. Jeremy Pena, one of the most best up-and-coming players in baseball. Brendan Rodgers was their big deadline addition, from Colorado to try and boost that corner infield. You lost Chas McCormick too. A lot of people forget about him. Spencer Arangetti, they lost to. Josh Hader, one of the best closers in baseball, also lost. Healthy pitching struggled outside of Hunter Brown, going with a 2.43 ERA and 10 Ks per 9, which is one of my favorite stats. Just a really bad farm system. They are currently ranked 29th according to MLB.com, MLB Farm System Pipeline.com. And what does their future look like? That's really what I want to ask you guys too, is what you think their future looks like. Again, for the third time in a row, I said we will be breaking this down in the Astros offseason. These will all be probably on separate episodes because one's in a different league and then 2 of them are in different divisions. So make sure to be watching here in the offseason. But spend the first 10 minutes talking about team collapses. Let's talk about some managers that are no longer employed, which is really sad. The first one is very interesting to me, too, is Bob Melvin was dismissed by the San Francisco Giants. He went 161 and 163 over the 2 seasons, and the Giants said they're looking for a different voice. That's what Buster Posey was saying, who's currently at the helm of the San Francisco Giants. And it's just a weird situation. I mean, him leaving San Diego was very controversial for a division rival. Really good run with the A's. He had a solid run with the Padres as well. And the Giants, the wheels just kind of fell off for him, which is really sad. I do think objectively Bob Melvin is one of the best managers in baseball, but I just don't think the Giants really fit for him. I don't think that I don't think the Giants are in a spot of competing with the talent that he's used to. He went from a team that is very, very historically known for trading away established talent for prospects, doing the best with that team, winning a couple division titles, wild cards as well, struggling in the postseason, but that's its own argument for another day, to a team with already established talent in San Diego Padres, to a team that the Giants is just kind of in the middle. So I'm not really sure. Bob Melvin gone overall. I think he gets another job if he doesn't retire, but interesting, especially after only 2 years. I was a little bit confused on Posey's logic, but they wanted a different voice, so we'll see what happens. Bruce Bochy is out in Arlington. Bruce Bochy is fired by the Texas Rangers. He went 249 and 237 with that World Series championship. Retired in 2019 and returned in 2023. I think he retires again. I don't think that he's really in a position where he wants to continue. I feel like this one was a little bit more mutual. There's another one we'll be talking about that was supposedly more mutual as well. Weirdly worded, weirdly acted by the Rangers. I'm not really sure. We're very confused on where the Rangers' direction is as an organization currently, since, World Series champion in very, very recent memory with a very good core talent, just struggling with pitching injuries predominantly. Corey Seager struggling with health, and Adolis Garcia struggling as well. But moving on to another just really, really weird situation too, with Rocco Baldelli was fired by the Minnesota Twins, 2019 Manager of the Year. They won 101 games. He went 527 and 505. The biggest thing that he is known for is that he led the Minnesota Twins to their first playoff series win since 2002 and 2023 over the Toronto Blue Jays. The Twins had the longest playoff win series drought, I think, of any team in sports at all, not just baseball. They've been basically mid since then, but not on my bingo card. I feel like that would have given Rocco a little bit more of a chance, considering he really did lead them to a lot better than they were, because in the end you can have winning seasons, but if you're not winning playoff series, it's kind of irrelevant. So Baldelli did at least manage to do that once. So we'll see. I definitely think he gets hired somewhere else. Wouldn't surprise me if San Francisco tried to bring him in, especially if the Giants do go for more established talent, but we'll see. Ron Washington fired by the Los Angeles Angels, Anaheim Angels, whatever they want to be called. Honestly, did all right despite the lack of talent. I mean, he had a bunch of health issues, which was really sad. We were all praying for him, praying for his health when he had to take that leave of absence. And then ever since then, he was potentially going to come back next year. And he's a good manager objectively. And I think that this is really just a definition of how badly run of an organization they are. How they're handling this, getting rid of him, it's weird. It's just kind of icky. It just gives me the ick, so to speak, as we say. How they handle Ron Washington, how the Angels handle him. Artie Moreno is a horrible owner. I think he's the second worst owner behind John Fisher in all of baseball, but I don't like it. I don't like what the Angels are doing. They're aging Mike Trout. They lost Ohtani. Basically a non-existent pitching rotation, non-existent bullpen. Talent that was called up way too early. That was mostly out of his control. Outside of Zach Neto, had a really good year, so hats off to Zach Neto. We'll be talking about him when we talk about the Angels a lot. But directionless organization, man, directionless organization, and we go from a directionless organization to an organization that's in a really, really weird spot. As Brian Snitker transfers to an advisory role from his management role to an advisory role. He took over in 2016. He won that 2021 World Series for him, and yeah, it's just kind of out of nowhere as well. He actually had been there a lot longer than I thought he had. Like, I'm not going to lie to you guys. I genuinely thought he took over for some reason in like 2019, which is just me being crazy. But yeah, I've never been a fan of him. I'll be honest with you. I know a lot of Braves fans had mixed feelings on him. They either really liked him or didn't like him. He's another one of those guys where I just didn't like the way he carried himself, at least in the, to the media. Again, that's not a end all be all. I just always felt like the way he answered questions and kind of the vibe that he brought wasn't the best. I was never really big on him, but Atlanta, another team similar to the Rangers, in a very, very weird spot between competing and not competing. There's so much talent there still in the Braves. They just can't stay healthy. They just can't stay healthy, man. So I think he'll do good in an advisory role. Definitely. He knows the organization very well. He's been a part of it. I believe he was part of it before he took over in the management role. And I want to say he took over, if there's someone between him and Freddie Gonzalez, I can't remember, but I believe he's been with the organization before. I'll have to look that up before his management, but he's been in it for at least 9 years. So definitely going to do well in that. And just, again, health. That's all the Braves need, health. They could go from missing the playoffs this year easily to having a bye, having a 1 or a 2 seed, being up there with the Dodgers, Phillies, and Brewers as well. So interesting stuff there. And we got one more managerial conversation to have is we have an extension, which I like to end on extensions when it comes to managerial discussions because those are nicer. I like ending on happier news as opposed to sad news. I don't like people losing their jobs. That's something I really, really am not a fan of at all, and that happens. Sad to see, livelihood and all that being ended, but Don Kelly is extended by the Pittsburgh Pirates, 59 and 65 since taking over for Derek Shelton. I've seen mixed reactions from my friends who are Pirates fans, obviously being up, north central West Virginia. There's a lot of them. So he doesn't control the front office, so we'll see. And as long as Bob Nutting is still running the show, it doesn't matter. Anyway, we will not be talking about the Pirates that much outside of the fact that it's probably going to outside of the fact of the thing I say every single time, which is the Pirates when they can compete. Pittsburgh is an amazing sports city in general. Baseball is awesome there. I love PNC Park, and I hope they can compete. I hope they can put some on Paul Skeens. A couple retirements here quickly announced. Garrett Cooper announces his retirement. 8 seasons with the Marlins, Red Sox, Yankees, Cubs, and Padres. He's a 2022 All-Star. He was a substitute, I believe, for someone. I can't remember. I think it was Bryce Harper, maybe. Call me crazy. But yeah, shout out Garrett Cooper. Had some good times, especially with the Marlins. I remember him. So shout out to him. Happy retirement. Michael A. Taylor, another solid career as well. He played 12 seasons in the major leagues. For the Royals, White Sox, Twins, Nationals, and Chicago Cubs. He had a 12.7 career WAR, so really solid. So to speak, that Instagram page, the Hall of Good, he'll probably be there. Really finishing his last 5 years or so solid. I kind of looked at his baseball reference. I glanced at it because Michael A. Taylor is one of those guys you see a lot in the field. You see he started for quite a while, and he was in the league for quite a while. But rough start to his career, especially war-wise. But he really got it up. He really improved toward the end. So Gold Glove in 2021 with the Kansas City Royals. So hats off Michael A. Taylor. We'll be briefly talking about a couple games here. So we have the Detroit Tigers and the Cleveland Guardians. Detroit winning game 1, and that so far has gone exactly how I expected it to go. Tarek Skubal going, I believe, 7 and a 2. Yep, 7 and a 2, 3 hits given up, 1 earned run, only 3 walks, and 14 strikeouts. So really good start by Skubal, who may or may not be there next year. We'll see what happens. Game 2 went to Cleveland as they had a really, really big 8th inning, putting up 5 runs. This is exactly what I expected. Stephen Kwan had a really good game. They hit a couple of home runs as well. Valaria hitting a home run, Bo Naylor hitting that big home run, and Brian Rocchio as well. Again, Casey Mize starting. This is what I was expecting. So I see Cleveland winning today. I see Cleveland winning on Thursday, taking it. That series, that's kind of overall where I had it. Skubal, again, you can't pitch him every day, and outside of that, Tigers don't have very much else, and they just did not have good vibes going into the postseason at all. Padres currently up 3-0 on the ninth inning as the recording of this video, so we'll be briefly talking about that. They won, the Cubs won Game 1, and it's looking like it's going to be going to a Game 3. Fernando Tatis Jr. was silent in Game 1. Manny Machado hitting that home run in Game 2. I overall think that the Cubs are just the better team. San Diego, I think, is another year out. I still think, I've been saying that for a while, I feel like, but who knows? Anything can happen that critical Game 3. It's really sad that this had to happen in the wild card round, by the way. It would have been really nice to see one of these teams be able to get a bye, but Milwaukee was really good, so we did not see that. Forgot to change that ticker, but there you go. Padres, Cubs. Moving on to the Red Sox and the Yankees, man, and that Game 1 was just absolutely insane. Bringing back the point, I was talking to Jason about this too. Bringing back the point of what do you remember Aroldis Chapman for when it comes to the postseason? Really, really good player, but what do you remember Aroldis Chapman for? It's the first two things I think of is the Rajai Davis home run and the Altuve home run. Two things I think about with him. He almost blew that in the ninth inning for the Red Sox, but he did manage to lock it down. A lot of people are joking, he just does it just to get the Yankee fans' hopes up. I don't think he's doing that necessarily, but Anthony Volpe with a home run. New York started hot. I do think, again, this is pre-recorded here, I do think that they win Game 2. I think New York wins Game 2, and I think it goes Game 3, but I still like Boston. I like the rotation better. I just think that they're in a better spot. So I'm still going to stick with Boston, but I think New York at least picks up one. Again, New York and San Diego, two teams I think are kind of in the same vibe here where it's like they need another year. But who knows? Maybe we'll see some Judge magic. Reds and Dodgers are the final wild card series we'll be discussing here right now. The Dodgers won Game 1, and the big thing I just want to highlight here is, as I've been, hemming and hawing about for the past 2-3 months at this point, is the bullpen. Jeff Passan talked about this too on Twitter. He tweeted about this, saying that this is the definition of the Dodger bullpen, is that you can score. You're not always going to be able to score 8, 9 runs, 10 runs per game. It's stupid that you need to go in and feel like you need to have like a 7-run cushion, because that's what I, as a Dodger fan, I'm comfortable with, is a 7-run cushion. Cincinnati having that 2-run 7th, that 3-run 8th, the 8th, the second that the starter leaves, regardless of who it is instantly falling apart. Moving Sasaki to the bullpen was a great decision by Dave Roberts. We need to have something there. Tanner Scott being put on the playoff roster legitimately made me angry, to be honest with you. It's nothing against him personally. He's just had a really rough year. And I would rather see Clayton Kershaw come out of the bullpen than Tanner Scott at this point. And it's nothing against him personally. It's just he doesn't have it right now. He just doesn't have it. And that's okay. You can work with that. He's still a very good reliever, but he's not a good reliever right now. And I don't think he should be on the playoff roster. But 5 runs in 2 innings being the norm for a bullpen for the reigning World Series champions is concerning. That was the strong point last year, was the bullpen. That's why I'm concerned about the Dodgers. I do think the Dodgers win Game 2. I do think the Dodgers move on. I don't like with where the bullpen is right now compared to what Philadelphia has offensively, and especially what they have in the rotation. They're going to be limiting that starting lineup for the Dodgers a lot more than the Cincinnati Reds will. Cincinnati Reds have one really, really good pitcher. One really, really good pitcher, one up-and-coming guy who I'm also very big on, Andrew Abbott, Hunter Green, Andrew Abbott. When you're dealing with a Phillies rotation that has 3 World Series start quality guys at least, that's concerning. So you shouldn't need Ohtani to have a multiple home run game every single playoff game to be able to win. You shouldn't. You can't. It's not possible to be scoring 10 runs. But I digress. I'm concerned about it, but I said that last year, and we ended up winning the World Series. So we'll see. We'll see what happens there, but the bullpen is something that needs to be addressed in the offseason regardless of where we end up. And we did address it last offseason. It just didn't work out. So we'll see what happens. Moving on to our power rankings, I have 2 bonuses I want to add to this really quickly. I have the Cincinnati Reds, who finished the year really, really good, even though they lost that final game of the year to Milwaukee. they still got in. And I got the New York Yankees as well, who finished really good too. I want to say 7-3, something like that, their last 10. We have the Dodgers at number 5. They managed to win the division, which is a big deal. I was concerned about that, but they still managed to do it. Excuse me. And the Toronto Blue Jays, number 4, another team that finished really, really good. I'm happy they managed to win the division. That was really, really nice to see them hang on. Milwaukee Brewers kind of played lukewarm baseball for quite a while, but still managed to win the Central. Seattle Mariners and Cleveland Guardians had probably the 2 best finishes you can possibly ask for. Seattle is kind of sitting there hanging out, waiting on their opponent. And Cleveland, I think they can go to the AL Championship again. It would not surprise me at all if we see Cleveland in the AL Championship again. Tanner Bybee with a really good start on Wednesday. Love to see it. Love to see it. So we're going to be doing a full breakdown here in a couple weeks. We're going to be doing 1 through 30. So we'll be starting probably with 30, but we'll be doing that in the postseason breakdown here in the next couple weeks. We'll be obviously, this is not set in stone. I'm going to have power rankings next week as well, because we're going to have teams eliminated. We're going to have teams who may upset, so we'll be talking about all that here in the following weeks as we inch closer and closer to that World Series, which is always a very bittersweet moment, because while I love playoff baseball, it's also really sad to see baseball end. Trivia. Last week, who won the 2012 Cy Young in the National League? Who won the 2012 Cy Young in the National League? I did a little question on a pitcher that a lot of people forget his dominance. I'm going to go do a question on a guy who really a lot of people forget his dominance. That's R.A. Dickey. R.A. Dickey won the 2012 National League Cy Young. This week, who are the 3 teams in this year's playoffs who have not won a title? Who are the 3 teams? There are 3 teams here. One of which has actually never even made the World Series ever. They're the only team that has never made the World Series. So that's our trivia question there. I gave you a little bit of a hint. Overall, everything's very up in the air. That's one of the only downsides of my recording schedule here, is that it's kind of in the middle. So I have my last episode, kind of my postseason preview. Some teams may be in, some teams may not be in. Last week in our record, we didn't know if it would be the Mets or the Reds in. This week, we're not really sure what's going to happen with Game 3 tonight. So the Game 3s are always exciting. I'm very excited for the divisional round. We'll have divisional round coverage next week. We will have divisional round starts on Saturday. We'll have that next week. On next Thursday, we'll have American National League Championship preview, and then we'll have the World Series, and then we'll be off to the off season. But as always, I want to thank you for tuning in to Dugout Debrief. I'm so grateful to be able to talk about something I really, really care about on a platform that has some of the best people in the world. So hats off to everyone. I was on the Gridiron Address this past Sunday with Aaron and Carson. We had a really, really good discussion about the Pittsburgh Steelers, about the Dallas Cowboys, Green Bay Packers, Carolina Panthers, where they stand with Bryce Young. We're starting to get more and more into serious discussions here. What's going on with Lamar Jackson. So we'll be talking about that as well after the 4 p.m. games this Sunday. We'll be talking about Lamar Jackson. That injury is a big deal. He's out 2 to 3 weeks last time I checked. So lot to cover here. And I just want to thank you guys for tuning in. Once again, happy October, happy postseason. See you next week.